Today's webinar is entitled Make It Make Sense, Strategies to Improve Comprehension of Word Problems. Your facilitators today will be myself. My name is Chandra Hall. I am the Education Associate for Elementary Math on the standard side. And today with me I have...
I'm Laura Dasher. I develop SC Ready Math for grades 3 through 5.
And thank you all for joining us today. So our learning goals for today, I can support my students in identifying various word problem structures and schemas, and I can explore strategies and methods for supporting students in solving word problems. Our agenda will consist of a focus on the structures of word problems. Our second item, we will focus on keywords, which I know tends to be a popular strategy, so we'll find out a little bit more about that. And then 3, we'll go into some suggested activities that you can do with your students to support them in comprehending word problems. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
All right. So on the board for you, we have a little meme. I'll give you all a second to read that. How I see math word problems. So is this how your students see word problems?
Can anyone relate?
Yes. Probably. I know I do. So seeing this paragraph and maybe not finding the ways, connections that are being made or the schema that is present. So we just hope you take into account your students' perspective during this presentation. In a moment, we are going to have a poll pop up on your screen. We would like to know what you have observed your students struggle with the most when it comes to word problems. So it should be popping up any moment. Chandra's taking the lead on that. And just take a moment to respond to the poll and feel free to select more than one if needed. So give you all a moment to complete the poll.
And it should be up on the screens now. Seeing reading problems is definitely the front runner right now with now it's 32%. Let's see, identifying appropriate operations, 17%. Identifying relevant information and irrelevant information, 15%. These are some of the top replies so far. Okay.
All right, so give everyone a couple more seconds. So those are some great responses. And we just hope that you're able to find ways to support today.
Yes.
All right, so now we're going to connect to the data. So one way to do that is by using our data review reports. It's always great to strive for instructional strategies based on data. So throughout the 2025 data review report, many instructional insights and strategies at grades 3 through 5 are mentioned. And a lot of those strategies mentioned help students with real-world math problems. So this was evident during our 2025 data review committee that we held during June of 2025. What is the data review committee? Teachers are selected to participate in a committee where they review selected test questions or test items from the SC Ready test. Teachers get to see how well students perform on the test and discuss ways students could be more successful on future tests. So from there, all those discussions are noted and combined to create the data review report. These reports come out every year. And in the 2025 report, there was much discussion on developing strategies to help students organize their thinking when solving real-world problems. So connecting to the data continued, these were the points made at each grade level as they relate to real-world math problems, word problems. I'm not going to read each one for you, but I do want to point out one from 3rd and one from 4th grade. using numberless word problems, and then ensuring students work with a variety of real-world math problems where numbers and operations are presented in different arrangements. These were mentioned at third and fourth grade just based off of the items that were present that were being reviewed during data review, but they can apply to all grade levels. And those are these strategies Chandra will be mentioning and going over today.
Perfect. Okay. So before we get into talking about strategies to support word problems specifically, a lot of times when we hear the phrase real world situation, we automatically think of word problems. But I just want to throw this point in there that that is not the only way that we can make connections for our students to the real world. In fact, we only use the term word problem in the standards once, and real world word problems is used twice. So we just want you to know that this is only one way that we can get our students engaged in real world scenarios. Other ways we can do that are through graphical displays and tables, which is easy to bring in when we're bringing in science and social studies and those things. Experiments and experiences with children, and those could even be field trips, field studies, and then bringing it back into the classroom and talking about the math you discovered while you were out and about, wherever it was that you went. Videos, images, and 3-act math tasks. If you have not heard 3-act math tasks, I highly suggest that you look those up. They are very engaging for students. And sometimes just a simple picture. There's a lot of math in pictures that we don't realize, but these are all ways that we can incorporate or engage our students in real world scenarios. And then, of course, I had to add word problems because that's the one that we're all familiar with. So now that I've thrown that in there, let's get into word problem structures. So we are going to talk about two different schemas. We're going to talk about additive schemas, and then we're going to look at multiplicative schemas. Under that additive schemas, there are several different types. The first one that we're going to look at is part, whole. And this involves adding or combining two or more distinct sets, each set representing a part that are put together to form a total. Okay. In our indicators, it is listed as part, whole, total unknown, one part unknown, and both add-ins unknown. And so you can see the graphic up there where you have part 1, part 2, and how that equals the total. So some examples of the different types. Gavin has 5 pencils, Corinne has 3 pencils. How many pencils do they have all together? And so you can see the organizer that has that information put in there, just a way for students to organize the information. So which type do you think this is? Which part, whole? Is it the total unknown, one part unknown, or both add-ins unknown? Feel free to unmute, or you could type it in the chat.
That looks like part whole to me.
It's part, whole. Is it the total unknown, one part unknown, or both add-ins unknown?
Looks like total unknown.
Total unknown. Perfect. Thank y'all. All right, a second example of a part, whole situation. Emery has $151 in his account and some more in his piggy bank. He has $273 in all. How much money is not in his account? So here we've organized this. Which type of example do we have here?
One part unknown.
Thank you. One part unknown. Okay. We don't know how much is in his piggy bank. which is why we have that question mark there. Now, in the lower grades, you'll use question marks, we'll use blanks, you can use squares. We start to use variables as we move into 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, of course. Okay, and a final example, part whole. Savannah has 3 3/4 miles left to run to meet her weekly goal. If there are only 2 days remaining in the week, how far could she run each day and still meet her goal? So what do y'all think? What is this an example of?
Both add-ins unknown.
Both add-ins unknown. Right. Thank you so much. All right, and notice I threw fractions in here because these word problem structures should still be used at the later grade levels. I know in our indicators, we see where they specifically list out the word problem types that you're expected to teach, but as we get into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we don't see those types listed out. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that all of these structures pretty much can be used with pretty much any content. So I wanted to throw the fractions in there. And of course, we can also use decimals and larger numbers to address all of our upper grade level people. Okay. Any questions about part whole so far? All right, we're going to move to the next additive schema, which is change. Okay, and with change problems, this involves finding the increase or decrease in the quantity of the same set. There's one set and then something happens to it, and I'll give you some examples in just a minute. In our indicators, you'll see it listed as add to or joining, take from or separating, result unknown, and change unknown. This is how it's listed in the indicators, okay? The verbiage is going to be a little bit different because we've had some more updated research and studies, and so this presentation reflects that, but I wanted to make sure that there was a bridge there, so I included the verbiage that you will see in your indicators. So some examples of change. Adam has 3 unfinished Lego sets. He receives 2 new sets for his birthday. How many Lego sets does he have to work on now? So what would this be? What type of change situation would this be an example of?
Add 2.
Add 2. All right. And my result is unknown, right? Good job. All right, let's look at another example. Logan has $50 for the school field trip. He gives his best friend $10 to spend. How much money does he have to spend now? What do y'all think about this type? Part unknown. Okay. So, all right, I'm trying to let my chat load. Okay, so take from or separating is what I'm seeing in the chat. Good job, you guys. And we will see these type of situations, of course, appear in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, but again, we would transfer all the way through 5th grade. Example 3, Jaden scored a total of 9 points in the first half of the basketball game. She finishes the game with 23 points. How many points did she score in the second half? What do y'all think about this one? Okay. I'm seeing change unknown. All right, good. So yes, this is an example of change unknown, and a change unknown is not actually pulled in until 1st grade. So kindergarten, they're not responsible for these types of problems quite yet, but in 1st grade is when we'll really start focusing on the change unknown types of structures. And again, this will transfer all the way through 5th grade. Let's look at one more type of change. Nyla has some change in her car for the toll road. Her brother gives her $2.25 more in change. She now has $4.88 in change. How much change did she start with? So what kind of example would this be? What kind of change problem? All right, I'm seeing start unknown, change start unknown. All right, good. We don't know the amount that we started with. We don't know what Nyla had to begin with. So this would be an example of a start unknown type of problem, okay? So this would come in second grade is when we start looking at when we don't know what we started with, and then we're adding an amount, and then we end up with a total. Again, third, fourth, and fifth grade can use these two with larger numbers, with fractions, and with decimals. The next additive schema is difference or compare. Here, this involves comparing and finding the difference between two sets. The indicators listed as additive comparison and comparison questions, depending on which indicators you're looking at. And you typically are not going to see these types of problems until we get to second grade. Okay, some of the language when it comes to comparisons can be tricky, which is why we wanted to hold off on introducing it to the kids. The fewer than, the how many more. I know so many of you know those struggles. We're trying to teach the kids, know what how many more means, you know, how many extra. So that is why it's something that we typically will say for second grade. Let's look at some examples of those. Example 1, Ryla has 3 fruit snacks left. Richland has 7. How many more fruit snacks does Richland have than Ryla? And you see the greater amount is there, the less amount, and then you're finding the difference. Okay. So what would this be? I kind of just gave it to you though, but I'm going to ask anyway. Difference unknown. Thank you, Christy. I see you. All right, let's look at the next one. Oh, it skipped 3. Okay. Example 2, Alexander scored 8 more points than Kylan. Alexander has 24 points. How many points does Kylan have? Okay. All right, here we're given the greater amount and we're given the difference. So what are students trying to find in this problem? The lesser amount. All right. Let's look at one more example of a difference compare schema. Samaya's brownie recipe calls for a half a cup less of sugar than Brielle's recipe. Samaya's calls for 1 3/4 cups. How much sugar does Brielle's recipe require? So here, we don't know the greater amount. We know the lesser amount, and we know the difference between the two. So here we are finding what the greater amount is. And again, we're seeing this in second grade and building on that all the way to fifth grade. Okay. Okay, notice I used a variable here too. I told you earlier that we start representing unknown amounts with variables, and this is something that we expect fourth grade to be able to do on their own, but we will start to show that to them. We can start in third grade. Okay, now those are all the additive schemas, and although it says additive, that, you know, is a little a little confusing. It does involve, as you saw, difference problems as well, subtraction. So let's move on to the multiplicative schemas. The first one we're going to start with are equal groups. And these involve multiplying or dividing groups where there is an equal number in each group. So the unknown is a missing factor, product, dividend, divisor, or quotient. Whoa, that's a lot of math terms. Please make sure you are using that mathematical language with your students so that they can communicate efficiently. So an example of this, and of course this is in third grade because that's when we start dealing with multiplication and division. Braylon bought 4 orders of chicken nuggets. Each order contained 5 nuggets. How many nuggets did he buy? Here, what are we solving for? Thanks. I see it in the chat. The product. Okay. All right, example 2. Tanaya has 40 charms to split evenly among her 5 pairs of shoes. How many charms does each pair of shoes it should be get? So what are we solving for here? All right, I see missing factor in the chat. Thank you. Y'all are quick in the chat. I appreciate it. All right. With third grade, they can be, the unknowns can be represented with a question mark, an open box, a symbol, or a letter. But again, fourth grade is when we're expecting students to use those themselves. Okay. Fourth and fifth grade can use this with larger numbers, fractions, as well as decimals, because we know that they use those. Those are some concepts that they cover. Okay, and again, I already made that note about the variable. All right, another type of multiplicative schema, and the second one, they're actually another one. There's 3 in all, but we only cover the first 2 in grades K through 5, so we're not going to take time to go through the third one. So it is comparison. And comparison involves multiplying a set a given number of times. The indicator is listed as multiplicative comparison situations. And problems should include unknown product, the size of the group unknown, and then the number of groups unknown. So some examples. I guess it skipped my first example. That's probably my bad. Let me see if it'll go back and I can show it. Nope. I'm sorry. Okay, so the second example says the bakery has 2 lemon cakes and half of a pound of cake left over from the day. How many times more lemon cake do they have than pound? So, and actually, I think that should be a half instead of a fourth there too. The struggle. I'm finding a lot of mistakes this time. But here, we're still trying to figure out how many times that needs to be multiplied in order to equal 2. Okay. So these are multiplicative comparison schemas. Wish there was a way that I could show my first example. Okay. So those are all of our word problem structures or our word problem schemas that our students will encounter in grades K through 5. And it's very important that not only you are aware of them as a teacher, but also to make the students aware of the different types. They should be able to tell you that that's a comparison problem, or that's a part-whole problem, or that's a change problem. And that needs to be something that is regularly communicated in the classroom every time we approach a word problem. So one strategy that I hear a lot that teachers use are keywords. So we're going to look at that in our second agenda item. All right, I'm going to show you some examples, and I would like for you to tell me how would using a keyword strategy in these problems mislead students. Okay, I have my little keyword chart here that we typically see hung up in the classrooms for the students to reference. So feel free to use that if you're not familiar with the keyword strategy, or if you just need a refresher. So here's our first problem. So what keyword do we see in this problem?
I see how many.
Okay, how many? We also see total. Okay, and if you notice, that tells us that we need to
Right.
add.
Volume.
Okay, and so that tells us that we need to add, right? Typically, if we're just using keywords. But is that what they're required to do here? This is a problem that would actually require, thank you, for them to subtract. Let's look at another one. Just think, we've only given the students this strategy. Find the keywords, look at the chart, figure out the operation. The keywords you can see here, fewer.
Fewer.
And fewer tells us what? We should be
Subtract.
subtracting. Is that what we need to do here? Okay.
No.
All right. Let's look at another one.
Ooh, each.
We see each there. Did we see divided in there? Okay. And if you notice, each is telling me to do two different operations. Am I multiplying or am I dividing? So see how tricky using keywords can get for students. And then if you look at D, what do you notice about D? Did you notice? Doesn't have any keywords. So what do they do then? Teacher, you told me to use keywords, but there's no keywords there. Now I don't know what to do. Okay, so I went through these specific problems to just let you know that keywords are not a strategy that is going to work for students all the time. And if it's not going to work for them all the time, let's just not frustrate them. Give them something that they can actually use all the time, and it's going to work. Okay. I kind of like to think about learning another language. If I see a paragraph in Spanish, and somebody just gives me a couple words of the paragraph out of the paragraph and tells me, yeah, that's what this word means. Yeah, that's what this word means. That doesn't mean I know what the paragraph is telling me to do. That doesn't mean I understand or comprehend the paragraph just because I know a couple words. All right, just like hearing conversations. If you only hear a couple words of the conversation, that could lead you to a completely different understanding of what they were talking about. So let's not use this strategy with students. Final points on keywords. Research done by the University of Texas at Austin and the University of Nebraska at Indiana analyzed high stakes release items across grades 3 through 8 from the Parks and Smarter Balance assessments. They found that for single-step routine word problems, keywords featured within the problem led to a correct problem solution with less than a 50% match rate and less than 10% for multi-step routine word problems. In addition to keywords being misleading, some problems do not have keywords, like we just saw, leaving a student taught to rely on keywords with no strategy. Further, when students have to use keywords to solve simpler problems, they become confused when asked to solve more complex multi-step problems. Because again, they cannot lean on that same strategy. So now we've talked about the different word problem schemas. We've talked about what not to do. So let's go into agenda item 3, where we are discovering some of the strategies that we can use. If you hear or see a strategy that you're already using in your classroom, please feel free to send an emoji, and you can do that by pressing the react button at the top of your screen. It has a little smiley face icon there, just to let me know what you have already been exposed to. Okay. So the first strategy I want to give you is to have students identify the schema, okay? You want, ideally, you want to start with one type of schema, and this is really for K through 2 when they're first learning about the different types. But if you notice that your students are struggling with a certain type in the upper grades, you can go back to just narrowing it down to that one type and helping them work through that. So you'll start off with one type of schema, such as part whole. You're going to start by giving them all of the information in the problem, and this can look like the problem that we saw earlier. Gavin has 5 pencils, Corinne has 3 pencils, they have 8 pencils altogether. Then you're going to work with them on showing this translation. So we're taking it from words to some type of structure, some type of visual, a picture for them to see. So here you see a bar of models right here, but you can also see this type of graphic organizer on the right. So you are just going to talk through it with them of how we determine where each part of that problem goes in terms of our graphic organizer or our bar model that you see here. Once they're comfortable doing that, we want to incorporate the unknown. So now we start leaving out the total, or now we start leaving out one part. So that way we can do that after we know that they understand where all the parts would go. Now, when you don't have a part, you know that you should put that question mark or leave that box empty. Okay. Teaching students how to solve word problems by identifying word problems types is more effective than teaching them only to identify keywords such as altogether or difference. Students who create accurate visual schematic representations are far more likely to solve word problems correctly, with one study reporting nearly a 6-fold increase in success when they were able to have a visual to go along with that. Okay. Power of visuals. You can also provide different graphic organizers for them so that they can use those to help identify the schema that they're talking, that particular word problem might be targeting. So the total, we see the difference, and some of these are a little bit different, just like the verbs, what they've called them, but you can see that they can still reference the pictures there. And you can tweak it however you would like, and of course, only including the ones that are applicable to your particular grade level. One thing I also want to caution you against is telling students how to solve it. For example, it says even when students apply the same schema to solve a word problem, they will likely approach its solution in a variety of ways. So even though we know we're trying to find a part, I may want to count up to get to 8. Another person may want to subtract, and so they would count backwards. You don't want to put the child in a box in terms of what they're going to use to solve it, because you might have a student that just wants to get the manipulatives out and solve it that way, or another student might want to use a number line. So just be cautious about how you approach the solving part of it after you've identified the schema. Another strategy is to use concrete and pictorial models. Visual supports reduce the load on working memory and assist students in reasoning about relationships rather than guessing operations. So visual supports such as bar models, also known as tape diagrams, are very helpful for students. Graphic organizers, as we've seen throughout the presentation. Number lines, specifically open number lines, because that leaves it open to students to determine what strategy they want to use to solve it using that model. T-charts and tables, and then of course math sketches. Okay, we want to call them math sketches, not drawings, because a lot of times when we tell students to draw something, they want to focus in on the details and making it all pretty. They see it as art and we don't have time for that. So math sketches might be something you might want to use with your students instead. Okay. Next strategy, context matters. I'm going to give you a minute to read those quotes, and then we're going to talk about them. Okay. What do you get from those quotes? Please feel free to unmute and let me know, or you can put it in the chat. What are those quotes saying to you?
It's saying that there's life experiences that sometimes come before just how much your reading comprehension can be. So sometimes kids with less life experiences of different things, or maybe varied experiences, struggle even if they can read well. But like it says with the connection about soccer, you can make that connection because you know about it. You make the inferences.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Anyone else?
Yes, Jennifer took the words out of my mouth just about, and this is one of the things that I harp on a lot. Without the experiences, it's not less, well, it's less likely to make a connection as quickly as we'd like. It's less likely to, if we don't have that background knowledge, to be able to visualize, because I think one of those when the synapses and dendrites make the connection, that's what's happening when you're comprehending. If you've had the experience and then you come into a situation where you get to use it, it's like, oh yeah, I know that.
You get excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Stephanie. I see a hand raised. Natalie?
Okay, yes. With my teaching experience, when students have background knowledge of what you're teaching about, it's more interested, it's more, you grab their attention, they can relate, they can speak up, they feel very important, they feel very smart. It's like, okay, the lesson is going on fine when background knowledge is all exposed and the students can use it because now it's realistic now.
Yeah. They can connect to it. And I love how even those students that often struggle with reading, when they have those life experiences to draw upon, a lot of times that opens doors for them when they're solving these types of problems. And sometimes giving kids experiences like field studies is another way to build that background, because not all students are exposed to the same things at home. So, but there are some things that we can do in the classroom to kind of help give them different experiences that are going to help support the learning that they're getting in the classroom. Anyone else?
The only other
Or was
thing I
there
wanted
anything
to
in the chat that I missed?
No, I think we covered it. Great discussion. I think there was one more person about to talk though.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the only other thing this makes me think about is I know we have a lot of multilingual learners in our district, and even just the context, but also just the background knowledge about certain words, make solving these real world situations, these story problems difficult. So again, just thought about those multilingual learners, and this is especially difficult for them.
Definitely. That makes me think of something that our MLL education associates, they took us through a training and they were talking about how the word blocks is different. Like if you live in the city and you track it according to blocks. Kids that live in the country may not know what that means. And then kids, might also think that you're talking about actual blocks that you build with. So yeah, that is another really good point. Thank you, Christy, for adding that in. I see one more hand. Jennifer, did you have anything else that you wanted to share, or is that still up?
And you just sort of hit on it again. I remember a bazillion years ago when I first started teaching, and we were doing some things as testing was evolving and getting more, where we were doing it every year and things like that, and getting more specific to our state content. The word pail came up, PAIL, in relation to going to the beach. They went to the shore and had their pail to get buckets. And until you got to where they were talking about seashells, most of our kids, and I live on the coast, I teach on the coast, we go to the beach with a sand bucket. Right. So until it got to where they were too wrapped up in what is a pail, it means something that is light, something that may be sick. No, they were just befuddled. And so sometimes it's just the varied language is such a hard thing with them too.
Right. Yeah. That is another good point. Thank you.
And Chandra, I just wanted to add, this is a shameless plug. I'm always plugging people apply to committees for assessment. We have a whole assessment on everything we're talking about. It's our content and fairness, our fairness committee. And you can apply on our website, and they do just this. Like you look at a test item in math and you say, okay, my multilingual learners don't experience this. And then we edit and fix that item so that it has a more of a universal design for SC Ready.
Yeah. That made me think of that too. Thanks for sharing.
It's a great committee. It's very fun.
So we know that it's very important. The context matters. The connections to their real world life, not just what's real world for us, but what is real world for them, will help them be successful as they're approaching these word problems. It gives them entryways into or pathways into the math. So we want to make sure that we do that for our students. Okay, numberless word problems is another strategy, and this was one that Laura shared about in our data connection. So numberless word problems are word problems where all the numbers have been removed. So an example of that, Derek has some toys. Hector has more toys than Derek. How many toys do the friends have all together? Why would I give my students this? Well, research has shown that when students are presented with a word problem, they often demonstrate a compulsion to calculate. How many of us have seen this? Gonna get our hand raised. Okay. Wordless problems are a way to combat that. When we take out all of the numbers, this allows the teacher to actually have a conversation with the students and make sense of the problems. Yes, I knew it. I wasn't going to say that, Tammy, but I'm so glad that you put that in the chat. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the chat. So this just opens that door for us to invite them to a discussion about the quantities, what's happening in the word problems. And then once they do that, we can add the numbers in and decide what we're going to do. Some prompts that we can give our students: what's going on in the problem? What can you picture in your mind? What do we know about the quantities and the relationships in the problem, even though there are no numbers? And what is the question asking us to find out? A really, really good resource for these numberless word problems, I've included that to the right of the screen. They have lots of word problems already, numberless word problems already created for you. They come in slideshows where they give you a numberless word problem in the beginning, and then they gradually add in quantities, and then you continue to make sense of the word problem. And they have them according to schema and according to grade level. So please check that out. We don't have time to dive into it today. You guys, this today was hard for me trying to put all of this information in there because there's so many things that we can do for word problems. Thank you, Laura, for dropping that in the chat. Yes. Um, but there are so many things that we can do. And I was like, what am I going to fit into an hour? So you won't hear everything, but hopefully you'll hear something that you can take back. But those are numberless word problems. A line at a time is another strategy. I actually got this one from a book by Christine King, 12 Strategies for Understanding Word Problems, which is another great resource. What you do is you just reveal a word problem a sentence at a time, and you just have them make sense of the problem that particular sentence, and you have them represent it visually as you're going through. So that way we can just build on to the information. Why would we use this? It reveals students' abilities to connect ideas from one sentence to the next. It slows down the process of answer getting, that term that Tammy put in the in the chat. And it encourages sense making by segmenting word problems. And then chunking the problem into smaller parts actually reduces the cognitive load on students. And then here are some prompts we can use for that. What does this mean? How can we show or represent that? And how does this connect to what I already know from the word problem? Okay, so that's a line at a time. Other quick tips, because we're coming to the end of our time. Develop math vocabulary. I am not saying keywords. Math vocabulary. They need to know what less means. They need to know what more means. They need to know what fewer and faster and longer, all of those things. When teaching explicit mathematic terms within mathematics language instruction for word problems, individual vocabulary terms do not define the operation of a problem. Again, talking about we're not picking out keywords to determine an operation. We are letting them explore the math language. Make sure that you provide opportunities for students to create their own problems. Let them create it. You'll see how much pride they have when other people have to solve it. Let them create it, find the solution, and then you can take those up and then pass them out later on. Okay? Questionless word problems are also another strategy you can use. So you give them the prompt, you leave off the question, y'all make sense of it, and you have students come up with questions that could be asked as a result of the information in the problem. And also matching the equation, where they will match an equation to a word problem or problem situation. And then provide error analysis opportunities. They intentionally made a mistake. What mistake did they make? How can we correct that? Okay, so those were just some more quick tips that you hopefully can use with your students to help them on this journey of understanding word problems. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Laura.
All right. Great job, Chandra. That was great.
Thank you. It was a lot of information.
It was. I would be out of breath if I were you. So we're going to take some time now to reflect. We are going to all participate in what we call a waterfall reflection. What we're going to do is you're going to think of what's one idea or strategy from today's session that you plan to try. We want you to type this in the chat, but don't hit send yet. Whenever we say 3, 2, 1, go, not yet, we will all waterfall and share our reflections together. And then we will kind of check out everyone's what they shared in the chat. So go now and type in the chat what's one idea or strategy from today's session that you plan to try. And then Chandra's going to do our red, yellow, green. It's time. So it's yellow, you should be typing.
Remember, don't share yet. Don't press send yet. We want them to come through all at the same time to form our waterfall effect. So right now we're just typing them up, but do not press send. Look at, I see some people pressing send.
It's yellow. And right before Chandra hits green, once we do share, we ask that you read through the comments and reply or use an emoji to react to at least 3 other responses. All right, are we ready? Chandra, are you ready?
Let's give them 10 more seconds.
Okay.
It'll be an extended 10 seconds. Ready?
We're ready. All right, go now and share.
Share. Press that send button. Tammy, I love it. Ooh. Nice. Oh, nice.
I know.
I see several people talking about how they're going to get that book by Christine King.
Mm.
Oh, someone is already seeing this in their iReady curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, math vocabulary instead of keywords.
Mm-hmm. Susan mentioned uncovering one line at a time to decipher what is understood. She likes that idea.
Nice.
Lots of numberless
Yeah.
word problems. It's great.
Yes. Oh, I see someone's pointing out the graphic organizers for math, because a lot of times we just see those in reading, but they can be used for math as well. I love that you pointed that out, Kim. Thank you. I see some people talking about knowing the different schemas. So I really wanted to make sure that I brought that in, especially for my upper grade level people who don't necessarily see all of those different types of word problems laid out in our indicators. I wanted to make sure that you were aware of those and to keep using those with whatever content you have, fractions, word problems, large numbers. Sketches, not drawings. You'll be there all day. Okay. All right, you ready?
Okay. All right, so we're about to wrap up our time. We're gonna just review our goals. As we read each goal, if you feel that the goal was met in our session today, please use the thumbs up reaction emoji to let us know. Our first goal for today's session, I can support my students in identifying various word problem structures and schema. And our second goal was I can explore strategies and methods for supporting students in solving word problems.
Yay.
Yay, lots of
See some
thumbs.
thumbs.
Upcoming professional development opportunities, we have Less is More. If you're interested in our next webinar, this is the benefits of representation progression models in K-12 instruction. You can use this QR code or the link on your screen to register for it. This session will take place on April 16th from 3 to 4. Please make sure to submit any questions you have using the link in the description for that webinar. And that will be our last webinar of the school year, which is
Yes,
crazy.
it is. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for your participation. And hopefully we will see you again in April.
Yeah.
Have a great day.